Hello friends, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Brian, and today we're going to look at a few more stories from Reddit. If you enjoy Reddit stories, why not hit like, subscribe, and maybe even the notification bell. And now, let's move on to the first story of the day. With love, my friends. I live in Port Lark, Oregon, where the fog hangs low over the river like it's trying to mind its own business, which is more than I can say for my ex and his wife. This morning I opened my email to a novella from my kid's stepmom, Vanessa, with the subject line clothes. No hello, no how are you, just a tidy paragraph about how she doesn't mind sending the kids to school and the nicer stuff she buys, so long as those items are returned from your house promptly. According to her, the issue isn't who bought it, it's getting decent clothing back. I was still on the first eye roll when my phone buzzed again, Ty, my ex, texting to scold me because our son's nails weren't clipped during their last handoff. He suggested I develop better systems. I suggested, in my head, not in the text, that he develop the ability to find his own nail clippers. For context, there are 5 of us in my little 2-bedroom duplex, me, my 15-year-old, my 12-year-old, and the 8-year-old twins. I'm the only income. The only adult toothbrush holder is my checking account, and it's missing bristles. $42,000 a year does not stretch far in Port Lark unless you're talking about stretching patience. We make it work with ramen, thrift store runs, and the kind of budgeting that requires a calculator and deep breathing. When the twins outgrow their jeans, those jeans become cutoffs, and then play shorts, and then rags. It's not because I don't care, it's because I do. I keep the lights on, the pantry stocked with things that can be turned into dinner at 8 p.m., and 4 backpacks more or less zipped. Brand new outfits are a holiday, not a habit. Meanwhile, Ty and Vanessa bring home 80 to 90 grand between them in a good year. He runs a seasonal landscaping business that is mysteriously foggy on paper and very sunny in real life. Cash under the table has a way of evaporating right before it gets to child support court. The last time we stood in front of a judge, I walked away with the right to claim the kids on my taxes. I did not walk away with a single monthly dollar. On paper, I make more. In reality, I make magic, 3 dinners out of 1 rotisserie chicken and enough calm to get everyone to school mostly matched and mostly clean. If I sound angry, it's because I am, and I hate that, too. Hate sits in your lungs and makes you feel like you're breathing old air. I'm in my 2nd year of a bachelor's program, clawing my way through the prerequisites for nursing because I want a job that's recession-proof and because I like being useful. I work full-time, study at night, and try to keep the house from tipping into laundry-based chaos. When I'm with the kids, I'm with them homemade popcorn and movie nights on a thrifted couch, dollar store nail polish, math homework on the kitchen table that wobbles if you look at it wrong. When they're with Ty, I pack what I can. Sometimes that includes a note reminding our son to clip his nails because I can't find the clippers that day. Sometimes it includes the exact sweatshirt Vanessa once called too worn. Sometimes it's just kisses and a promise with my whole chest. I'm typing this with talk-to-text because my phone screen spiderwebbed last week and doesn't register my thumb half the time. So if the punctuation is weird or the sentences are a little breathless, that's why. I needed somewhere to put this. Somewhere to set down the email about decent clothing and the text about fingernails and the way I feel small every time I pick them up after a weekend and someone has made a list of the ways I am not enough. I'm not perfect. I misplace things. I let the twins stay up too late on Fridays. I have cried in the laundry room with my forehead against the dryer. But I am trying hard, all the time. And still, somehow, I'm the one who gets the inventory of my failures delivered to my pocket like clockwork. I don't want to hate them. I wish I could be bigger than that. I wish I had thicker skin or a better phone or a budget that could buy brand new everything twice. But here I am, whispering be kind to myself while screenshotting Vanessa's email into a folder labeled co-parenting because that's the only way I know to keep receipts without keeping score. The email from her hit me right in the gut, though it wasn't even anything earth-shattering. Just her calmly outlining how she'd keep sending the kids to school with extra clothes as long as she got them back from my house. She said it wasn't about who bought them, just about making sure decent clothes were returned. The word decent sat in my chest like a stone. Almost at the same time, my phone buzzed. It was Mason, my ex. His text was a barrage of insults because I hadn't clipped Jonah's fingernails before the kids went back to his house. I stared at the cracked screen, my thumb hovering, and thought about how surreal it was that I could raise 3 kids in a cramped rental, work full-time, study late into the night for my degree, pay bills on a single $42,000 income, and somehow still get lectured about nail clippers. I wish I could say I shrugged it off, but the truth is I cried in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear. Not because of the nails or the clothes, but because I was exhausted from being judged for every microscopic thing while I was barely holding everything together. My kids don't get shiny, brand new outfits every other month. At my house, their jeans get worn thin until knees peek out, and t-shirts hang a little faded after too many washes. We don't have the luxury of extras. Between groceries, rent, and tuition, there isn't much left. I haven't even been able to splurge on second-hand hauls lately. Meanwhile, Mason and his wife brag about how their joint income fluctuates between 80 and 90 grand a year. Yet somehow, I'm the one they accuse of failing. Child support? Forget it. Mason's business runs mostly in cash, and on paper he earns next to nothing. The courts looked at his official income and my W-2, and guess who they decided makes more? Me. They never considered his wife's paycheck, because legally, it doesn't count. So, I walked out of the courtroom with nothing but the right to claim the kids on my taxes. 4 years of fighting, and all I had to show for it was paperwork and bitterness. I kept telling myself, 2 more years. 2 more years and I'll have my degree, a better job, and maybe the freedom to breathe. That mantra was the only thing keeping me from collapsing under the weight of it all. But Mason and his wife never missed a chance to chip at me. Every time I dropped the kids off, it was something new. They told me the kids were suffering because I spent too much time studying, that they deserved better, that I was selfish for trying to build a future. The irony of 2 adults with steady paychecks criticizing me while I scraped by made my blood boil. I hated them, hated how small they made me feel, hated that they always seemed to find a fresh way to undermine me. The worst part? That hate stuck to me like tar. I didn't want to carry it, but every message, every pointed look at pickup, every judgment about my parenting fed it. Some nights, lying awake in my too small bed, I'd catch myself replaying their words and seething. I'd tell myself to let it go, but it never really left. I try so hard to hold everything together for the kids. I'm working, studying, making sure they know they're loved, trying to build something better out of the mess I was left with. But with Mason and her always waiting to tear me down, I often feel like I'm drowning. And what scares me most is that I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending I'm fine. When people online say, you should go after him for child support, I want to scream. Like I haven't tried. Like I haven't sat in stiff courtrooms with my heart in my throat while lawyers shuffled papers that reduced my life to numbers. On paper, Mason makes a fraction of what I do because most of his landscaping gigs are cash. He flaunts it too, bragging about pulling in 30 or 40,000 a season, while reporting maybe 10. The system swallows his lies, and I'm left holding the bag. And no, they don't count Vanessa's salary. She works in healthcare, pulls in 65 grand a year, but legally that's hers. Doesn't matter that she's feeding, clothing, and housing the kids half the time too. The judge didn't care. The court only saw my paycheck in Mason's doctored books. So yes, I make more than him. More, as in I'm taxed properly. More, as in I can't afford to pay an accountant to bury half my income under expenses. Sometimes I think about what led me here. I was fine before. I had a rhythm, a plan. Then Mason convinced me to move states, away from everyone I knew, to be closer to his family. I was a stay-at-home mom with the twins, no local support, no savings, and all my eggs in his basket. Then he cheated. When I left, we split what little there was. Spoiler, there was nothing. So, I started over in Port Lark with 3 kids, a cracked phone screen, and the kind of determination you don't brag about because it's born out of necessity. I get through the days by compartmentalizing. I don't badmouth him to the kids. When he skips birthdays or favors one twin over the other, I patch the holes with white lies, daddy's sick, he had to work. They don't need to feel rejected because their father can't prioritize them. I swallow that anger like it's medicine, even when it burns. But the cracks show sometimes. My oldest, Mia, is 15 now and already picking up shifts at the diner downtown to save for a car. I should be proud, and I am, but I also feel guilty. She's a kid. She shouldn't be worried about gas money and insurance when she should be at football games or sleepovers. My middle one, Daniel, watches her with envy. He's 12, counting down the months until he can get his first job. That's not how childhood should look. And then there's the email. Vanessa blocked my number months ago, after my daughter mentioned she'd yanked her hair one morning while brushing it out. When I asked about it, she flipped, claimed it was just brushing too hard, then blocked me altogether. Now she only communicates through email, these clinical, condescending little notes about socks and jackets and decent clothing. She talks like she's filing HR complaints, not co-parenting kids. I know some of you will say, stop letting them get under your skin. Easier said than done. Every snide remark cuts. Every nitpick about laundry or nail clippers feels like confirmation of my deepest fear, that no matter how hard I work, I'll never be enough for my kids. I keep telling myself it's not true. They love me. They see me. They know who makes their lunches and helps with projects and kisses their foreheads at night. But then I picture them in Mason's car, listening to his version of events, and I wonder how long my truth will hold. How long before his bitterness colors their view of me? I can't fight back, I won't badmouth into them, but the silence feels like losing. The hate I feel isn't who I want to be. It's like carrying a backpack full of bricks everywhere I go. Some days I wake up determined to set it down, to be lighter. Then the texts come. The emails. The sideways looks at pickup. And suddenly, the backpack is strapped back on, heavier than ever. When I first started school, everyone told me I was crazy. How are you going to manage full-time work, 3 kids, and classes? The truth is, I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't keep treading water forever. Nursing was my lifeline, something solid, something that could change the story for me and my kids. But school came with sacrifices. Nights at the kitchen table with textbooks piled up, the twins begging me to watch another episode of whatever cartoon they loved that week, and me saying, just 10 more minutes, I promise. 10 more minutes turned into an hour, and sometimes I cried quietly in bed afterward because I felt like I was failing both as a mom and a student. Of course, Mason and Vanessa used that against me. The kids say you're always busy. They deserve a parent who has time for them, not just excuses. The irony of hearing this from 2 people with double my income and none of my load was rich. But their words sank in anyway. I carried them like evidence against myself. And yet, I kept going. Every past exam felt like proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't selfish for trying. My classmates were mostly younger, living with roommates or parents, and they'd complain about stress while sipping $6 lattes. Meanwhile, I'd be scribbling notes during my lunch break, trying to stretch one gas tank through the week. I felt invisible, like I lived in 2 worlds that didn't overlap. The kids noticed. Mia started leaving little sticky notes on my desk. You've got this, Mom. Don't forget to eat. She even taped one to my coffee mug once that said, Future Nurse Superstar. I saved them all in a shoebox under my bed. On my lowest nights, I'd pull them out and reread them until I believed I could keep going. The outside world didn't see that, though. To Mason, all he saw were the missed nail clippings, the faded clothes, the moments where the kids told him, Mom's studying. To Vanessa, I was the woman who sent their nice clothes back wrinkled or misplaced. They didn't see me making ramen stretch into stir-fry, or staying up until 2 a.m. just to make sure Mia's science project had glittery lettering even though I had a 6 a.m. shift. One night, after an especially rough day of exams and back-to-back double shifts, I sat in the car outside my house, engine off, listening to the rain hammer the windshield. I didn't want to go inside, not because I didn't love my kids, but because I was so afraid they'd see me crack. For 20 minutes, I just sat there, whispering, "You can do this," over and over like a mantra. Eventually, I walked in, and sure enough, the twins tackled me with sticky hands and wide grins. It was enough to patch me up, at least for the night. People sometimes ask why I don't just block Mason and Vanessa completely, why I don't fight harder in court, why I don't drop school and focus on being a mom. The answer is simple: I can't afford to. Not financially, not emotionally. The kids need me to keep pushing, even when it feels impossible. They need me to show them that survival isn't the end goal. Building something better is. And maybe, deep down, I need that too. It wasn't just the nitpicking anymore, it started to feel like open warfare. Vanessa's emails grew longer, sharper. She'd CC Mason on them like she was documenting a workplace violation. Please ensure Jonah's shoes are returned in wearable condition. Please note that Avery's jacket was stained last time. The way she wrote made me feel like I was being evaluated, not co-parenting. Mason, on the other hand, loved to fire off texts in bursts of rage. He once sent me 11 in a row about how neglectful I was for letting the kids' backpacks get messy. 11 texts over some crumbs at the bottom of a bag. And because my phone screen was already cracked to hell, each one took forever to scroll through. It was like reading his anger through shards of glass. I tried ignoring them, but silence only seemed to feed them. I tried responding politely, but that opened the door for more lectures. It was like being trapped in an endless loop of criticism, damned if I replied, damned if I didn't. The kids started noticing the tension, too. Jonah once asked me, "Why does Dad always sound mad when he talks about you?" I froze. I wanted to lie, but kids can smell dishonesty a mile away. So I told him the truth. Sometimes adults don't agree. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong, and it doesn't mean I don't love your dad for giving me you. He nodded, satisfied, but I could see the wheels turning in his little head. The twins were still young enough to shrug most of it off, but Mia wasn't. She saw the favoritism. Mason doted on Jonah, tossed him footballs in the yard, while Avery, his twin sister, got brushed aside. Mia would roll her eyes and whisper to me later, "He doesn't even try to hide it." I told her not to hold it against him, but she wasn't wrong. Even Mason's affection came with bias, like he was still punishing me by proxy. The breaking point for me came after Avery told me Vanessa had yanked her hair one morning while brushing it. Not a gentle tug, she said it hurt. When I brought it up, Vanessa snapped that Avery was just being dramatic. Next thing I knew, my number was blocked. That's when the emails started. Cold. Distant. Conveniently detached. I reported the incident, but legally nothing came of it except a note in some dusty file. I hated how powerless it made me feel. At night, I'd scroll through forums and vent anonymously. Strangers on the internet told me to document everything, to use co-parenting apps, to report him to the IRS for underreporting. Some even told me I should never have had kids if I couldn't afford them. That one cut the deepest. They didn't know that I could afford them, once. Before I gave up my career to be the stay-at-home mom Mason swore he wanted. Before he cheated. Before he left me stranded in a city where I had no family, no savings, and no plan. Sometimes I wondered if Mason ever looked back at the life we had and felt even a flicker of guilt. Or if he truly believed his own narrative, that I was failing, that I was selfish, that he and Vanessa were the only competent parents in the equation. Maybe he did. Maybe it was easier to rewrite history than to face what he'd done. All I knew was that I couldn't keep letting their voices drown out mine. I didn't know how yet, but something had to change. The shift started small, almost by accident. One night, after reading yet another email from Vanessa about ensuring proper return of garments, I burst out laughing. Not the happy kind, but the bitter, exhausted kind that bubbles up when you're too tired to cry. I sat there on my sagging couch, surrounded by unfolded laundry, thinking, this woman acts like she's HR for a Fortune 500 company instead of a stepmom in Port Lark. That laugh turned into something else, resolve. If I couldn't stop the emails, I could at least stop letting them define me. A friend recommended a co-parenting app that tracked all communication. No more texts at midnight. No more "I didn't say that" arguments. Just a tidy record the court could see if things ever blew up. I brought it up in mediation, and to my shock, the judge agreed. Mason hated it, Vanessa even more, but once it was ordered, their snide remarks turned, clipped. Professional. Less venom, more restraint. It didn't solve everything, but for the first time in years, I felt like I'd set a boundary. I also started documenting everything. Every missed birthday Mason skipped, every accidental late pickup, every time the twins came home saying Vanessa lost her temper. At first it felt paranoid, but the more I wrote, the more I realized I wasn't imagining things. The favoritism, the undermining, it was all real, and now I had proof. School got harder, too. My clinical rotations were brutal, and there were days I thought about quitting. But then I'd come home, find Mia's sticky notes, or watch Daniel proudly help the twins with homework, and I remembered why I was pushing through. Every hour in scrubs, every late-night cram session, was a brick in the foundation I was building for us. The hate didn't vanish overnight, but I started to understand it differently. It wasn't just anger at Mason or Vanessa, it was grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had. For the support system I thought I'd built. For the life where I didn't have to defend myself over missing nail clippers. And grief, I realized, could be redirected. Instead of pouring it into rage, I tried to pour it into momentum. I filed another IRS report, even if it went nowhere. I saved every spare dollar, even if it meant skipping coffee or eating leftovers for the fourth night in a row. I reminded myself, 2 years. Just 2 more years, and I'd be licensed, employed, and untouchable. The kids noticed the change, too. They still heard the digs from their dad, but they also saw me standing taller. One night, Mia hugged me tight and said, "Mom, you're stronger than them." I nearly broke down on the spot. It wasn't strength, it was survival. But if she saw me as strong, maybe that was enough. For the first time in years, I felt like I was reclaiming the narrative. Mason and Vanessa could keep their decent clothing and their barred texts. I had something better, forward motion. Just when I thought things were stabilizing, Mason found a new angle. It wasn't enough to criticize me about clothes or groceries, he went nuclear. It started with a knock at my door one Thursday afternoon. 2 people from DCF, Department of Children and Families, stood there with clipboards, saying they'd received concerns about my boyfriend. My stomach dropped. I just started dating Evan a few months earlier, a sweet, steady man who worked long shifts at the shipyard. He was careful with my kids, respectful of boundaries, and patient with my chaos. He wasn't perfect, but he was good. DCF wouldn't tell me who made the report, but they didn't have to. I knew. Mason. The allegations were ridiculous claims that Evan was unsafe, that I left the kids unattended, that the house was filthy. I walked them through our little duplex, heart-hammering, pointing out the freshly vacuumed rug, the stocked fridge, the neat stack of textbooks on the kitchen table. The twins waved at them with peanut butter on their cheeks. DCF took notes, nodded, and left. But the shame lingered like smoke. When I confronted Mason through the co-parenting app, he played dumb. "Not sure what you're talking about." I could almost hear the smugness dripping through the screen. The visits kept coming, 3 in total over 2 months. Each time, I cooperated, each time I was cleared. Finally, the last worker told me straight, "We've warned your ex that false claims are a crime. If it continues, the police will get involved." That was the first night in weeks I slept without jolting awake at every noise. Evan took it hard. He hated being dragged into the drama, but he stayed. One night, he said quietly, "He's trying to break you down because he knows you're winning." I wanted to believe him, but most days I still felt like I was hanging by a thread. And yet, despite everything, I kept moving forward. My clinical hours ticked by. I was so close to graduating I could taste it. The kids had started to beam with pride when they told teachers, "My mom's in nursing school." Even Daniel, who'd once sulked that I studied too much, bragged about me to his friends. Mason must have sensed the shift, because his messages softened, less venom, more helpful suggestions. It was almost comical, watching him backpedal when his games stopped working. Vanessa's emails shrank to a few clipped lines. The co-parenting app was doing its job, boxing them in. But the scars were there. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for impact. Every time I opened the front door, I half expected another clipboard. Living like that takes years off your life. Still, for the first time in a long time, I could see the light. My degree was within reach. My kids were proud of me. Mason's tricks were losing power. The hatred I'd carried so long felt lighter, not gone, but no longer crushing. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to start imagining a future where their voices didn't drown out my own. Graduation day didn't look glamorous. No cap and gown, no cheering crowd. Just me, standing in front of my bathroom mirror in Port Lark, scrubbing mascara off my cheek and whispering, "You did it." My nursing license was official. I had survived. The kids celebrated in their own way. Mia baked a lopsided cake that leaned so far to the left it looked like it was trying to escape the pan. Daniel taped a handwritten "Congrats Mom" sign above the stove. The twins decorated the living room with construction paper hearts. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. For the first time in years, I felt like I'd stepped out of survival mode. Money got better almost overnight. With a steady RN job, I bought the kids new clothes, not thrift store new to us, but actually new. Watching them rip off tags and twirl around the living room felt like a victory parade. For once, I wasn't stretching a chicken into 3 meals or counting quarters at the gas pump. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't suffocating either. Of course, Mason noticed. Suddenly he was less hostile, more helpful. He offered to take the kids extra weekends. He messaged through the co-parenting app with polite suggestions instead of lectures. It was almost jarring, like dealing with a man who had been body snatched. Part of me wanted to believe he'd turned over a new leaf. The bigger part of me knew better. The truth came out a few weeks later. A mutual friend admitted Mason had been warned that false reports to DCF could land him in legal trouble. Apparently, after his third attempt blew up in his face, the social worker told him flat out, "Do it again and we call the cops." That explained the sudden helpfulness. It wasn't growth, it was fear. Vanessa stayed quieter too. Her emails slimmed down to basic logistics. No more digs about decent clothing, no more snide remarks about backpacks. I think the app forced her to realize that every word could be read by a judge. Funny how accountability changes people's tone. Meanwhile, Evan was still around. He weathered the storm, even when Mason tried dragging him through the mud. One night, after the kids were asleep, he told me, "You're stronger than you think." Most people would have folded. I didn't feel strong, I felt battered, but hearing it out loud mattered. For the first time in forever, I started to dream. Not the desperate 2 more years mantra I'd clung to, but actual dreaming, a house with more than 2 bedrooms, maybe a backyard, maybe even a dog. Stability. A future where my kids grew up without feeling like they had to tiptoe between households. The hate wasn't gone. Some nights it still crept in, whispering about all the years I lost, all the ways Mason got away with things he shouldn't have. But it didn't consume me anymore. Now, when I looked at my life, the loudest thing wasn't anger, it was relief. And in that relief, a new thought bloomed: maybe, just maybe, the best revenge wasn't hating them back. Maybe it was building a life so full and solid that their bitterness couldn't touch it. Once I was officially a nurse and bringing home a steady paycheck, something subtle shifted in our house. The kids no longer asked, "Can we afford this?" before putting something in the cart. Mia still checked price tags out of habit, but when I told her she could pick the nicer backpack, she didn't argue. Watching that tension ease off their shoulders, that was worth more than any raise. Our relationship deepened in ways I didn't expect. The twins started bragging to their friends, "My mom's a nurse. She saves people." Daniel, who once complained that I was always studying, now came to me for advice about school projects, saying, "You're the smartest person I know." Even Mia, who had been quietly carrying more weight than a teenager should, began to relax. She went to football games, stayed late with friends, let herself be 15 instead of acting 30. And Mason? His armor cracked. Maybe it was the co-parenting app forcing civility, maybe it was seeing me no longer scrambling for rent, maybe it was the warning from DCF. But he became less venomous. Still arrogant, still inconsistent, but quieter. He even complimented me once, saying, "The kids seem happy." It was a small sentence, but after years of being told I was failing, it landed heavy. Vanessa stayed in the background. No more essay-length emails about socks. Just short, clip logistics, pickup times, dentist reminders. I almost laughed the first time I read one that ended with thank you. Not because I believed she'd suddenly found kindness, but because it proved she wasn't untouchable. The kids noticed his behavior too. Jonah once whispered, "Dad doesn't yell about you anymore." Avery added, "Yeah, it's weird." I hugged them both and told them, that's a good thing. They don't need to know the details. They don't need to carry the history. It's enough for them to feel peace. Even Evan's presence helped. He didn't try to replace their dad, but he showed up consistently. Fixed a leaky faucet without being asked. Sat through Jonah's endless card tricks with real enthusiasm. Drove Mia to practice when my shift ran late. His steady, gentle presence reminded me that not every man comes with chaos attached. The bitterness I'd carried for years started to feel quieter. Not gone, never gone, but muted. When I thought of Mason and Vanessa, it wasn't fire in my lungs anymore. It was more like smoke, irritating, but not suffocating. I could see past it. I could breathe through it. One night, after tucking the twins into bed, I stood in the doorway watching them sleep. Their little chests rose and fell under mismatched blankets, stuffed animals tucked close. In that moment, I realized something: the hate had been eating me alive, but it never defined them. They loved me, unfiltered, no matter how many digs their father threw, no matter how many emails their stepmom sent. Their love was simple and solid. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to let go. If you had asked me 3 years ago what winning looked like, I would have said, child support checks in the mailbox, Mason humbled in court, Vanessa apologizing for every nasty email. I thought justice meant seeing them lose. But standing here now, in a tiny rented kitchen with mismatched mugs and a steady heartbeat in my chest, I see it differently. Winning isn't them groveling, it's me not needing them at all. I'm a registered nurse. I walk into work each morning in scrubs with my name stitched on the badge, and for the first time in years, I feel proud introducing myself. I don't choke on shame when the kids' teachers ask about home life. I don't panic at the gas pump. I buy groceries without doing math in my head. That's winning. The kids are thriving. Mia is studying for her driver's test, Daniel's playing soccer, the twins are obsessed with building elaborate pillow forts. They laugh, they argue, they dream out loud about the future. When I ask them what they want to be when they grow up, they don't say worried or tired. They say teacher, vet, astronaut. That's winning. Even Mason has changed, not because he wanted to, but because circumstances forced him to. He's less combative now, less eager to pick fights. He still has his flaws, still makes selfish choices, but he knows I'm not the woman he left stranded years ago. I'm not desperate or powerless anymore. And maybe that's the biggest shift: I don't fear him. I don't need him. Vanessa? She's still around, still stiff in her emails, still acting like she's running a corporation instead of a blended family. But she no longer has power over me. Her words roll off my back like water now, because I built something she can't touch: stability, independence, a home filled with love. The hate I carried, it's not gone. Some nights it still creeps in, whispering about the years I lost, the humiliations I endured. But it doesn't consume me anymore. It's not the loudest voice in the room. These days, the loudest voice is my own, reminding me that I survived, that I rebuilt, that I am enough. And maybe that's the truest victory, not proving them wrong, but proving myself right. That I could hold it together when everything was falling apart. That I could raise 3 kids in the middle of chaos and still give them laughter, warmth, and a future. When I tuck them in at night, I don't think about Mason or Vanessa. I think about sticky notes taped to my coffee mug, pillow forts collapsing in giggles, and the sound of my kids breathing easy in their sleep. That's what winning looks like. And that's all I ever wanted.